All right, what if I told you there was this secret weapon against stress, and it was hiding in stuff you probably already eat, like oatmeal and mushrooms? Today, we are diving deep into a fascinating dietary fiber called beta-glucan, and its pretty wild connection to our mood.
I know, it sounds a little too good to be true, right? Can a simple fiber, something you find in your breakfast, really change how you feel when you're stressed? Well, that is the big question we're digging into. We're going to follow the evidence, from the lab all the way to real-world human trials, and see what the science actually has to say.
Okay, so first things first. Before we dive into the how, we gotta cover the what. So what in the world is this beta-glucan stuff anyway?
So at its most basic, beta-glucan is what's called a polysaccharide. Now, that's just a sciencey way of saying it's a super long chain of sugar molecules. But here's the key. Your body can't really digest it. It's a type of soluble fiber that you find in the cell walls of things like yeast, fungi, and some grains. And just to be clear, for the powerful effects we're about to see, the studies use a really specific, highly purified form that's usually pulled from yeast.
So, how in the world could a fiber mess with something as complicated as your mood? Well, to get that, we need to take a quick look under the hood at how our bodies handle stress. What's actually happening on a biological level when we start to feel totally overwhelmed?
Think about it. When you get stressed out, doesn't matter if it's from running a race or just a crazy day at work, your body basically hits the panic button, and that button floods your system with stress hormones. In the animal studies we're going to look at, the big one is called corticosterone. It's the body's red alert signal.
Okay, so that leads to the million-dollar question, right? If corticosterone is the fire alarm blaring, can beta-glucan come in and act like the firefighter? Well, to figure that out, researchers first turned to an animal model.
And check this out. This is from a mouse study back in 2010, and it's pretty wild. Look at that middle bar. Those are the stressed out mice, and you can see their corticosterone levels just shot through the roof. But then, get this. The mice on the right were also stressed, but they were given that highly purified yeast-derived beta-glucan. And that huge stress spike, it's gone. Their levels are right back down with the calm, unstressed mice. It completely blocked the alarm.
Now that mouse study is super interesting, a really great clue. But let's be real, we're not mice. The big question is, does this actually work for people? Let's see if these effects hold up when you move out of the lab and into the messy, real world.
So to really put this to the test, researchers needed to find folks under some serious physical stress. And, what's more intense than running a 26.2-mile marathon, right? It's an insane test of endurance that pushes your body and your mind to the absolute edge.
Here's how they did it. Back in 2009, they ran this really solid human trial, placebo-controlled, double-blind, the whole 9 yards. They got 75 marathon runners, and for 4 weeks after the race, they gave them either a placebo or that specific yeast-derived beta-glucan. Then they had them track how they were feeling using a standard psychological survey called the Profile of Mood States.
And the results? Whoa, they were pretty staggering. The runners taking that 500 milligrams of yeast beta-glucan, they reported a 59% drop in fatigue compared to the placebo group. Think about that. Feeling almost 60% less exhausted after a marathon. That is huge.
And it wasn't just about being less tired. They also said they felt 45% less confusion, that brain fog you can get when you're totally wiped. And on the flip side, their scores for vigor, which is all about energy and mental sharpness, shot way up. So they didn't just feel less bad, they actually felt better, more clear-headed, and more energetic.
Okay, great. So it helps with a massive physical stressor, like a marathon. But what about the day-to-day grind? The psychological stress that so many of us deal with? Well, researchers decided to test that exact same yeast beta-glucan on a group of women who said they were dealing with moderate stress in their daily lives.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting. The women taking the beta-glucan were actually physically healthier. They reported fewer things like colds and sniffles, and that physical boost had a direct impact on how they felt mentally. The study's authors literally said they just felt better, and the psychological tests back that feeling up completely.
Look, these individual studies are awesome. They're really compelling. But in the world of science, the gold standard, the highest level of evidence, is when you can combine a bunch of studies together in what's called a meta-analysis. It gives you the best possible big-picture view.
So in 2015, that's exactly what researchers did. They took data from 16 different high-quality trials, looking at the combined results from a total of almost 1,500 people. With a number that big, you can be pretty darn confident in what you find.
And when they put all that data together, the conclusion was undeniable. Taking this kind of beta-glucan leads to a real, measurable drop in fatigue, a big boost in vigor, and a significant improvement in your overall mood. The pattern just kept showing up, again and again.
Okay, so after all of that, what's the big takeaway? What's the bottom line here when we connect this simple fiber to how we actually feel?
Let's just quickly retrace our steps, right? We started super small, at the mechanism level, and saw how yeast beta-glucan could actually block that stress hormone response in animals. Then we zoomed out to see it work in the real world, for both super athletes and everyday people under stress. And finally, we went to the highest level of evidence, that huge meta-analysis, which sealed the deal, confirming the effects across thousands of people.
You know, this whole journey into beta-glucan really opens up a bigger, fascinating idea. It shows this incredibly strong link between what we eat, how our immune system is doing, and our mood. So it really leaves you with one last question to chew on. If our immune system is so tied to how we feel, what else should we be eating to feel our absolute best?